What's good? It's your boy Fanon. Got some good news in the middleweight division, which honestly we could use right about now because of all the nonsense going on with Canelo Alvarez and Gennady Golovkin's canceled bout. The fight that was canceled, that was supposed to be on May 5th and was canceled because Canelo Alvarez withdrew after having been suspended or temporarily suspended by the Nevada State Athletic Commission for testing positive on 2 occasions for clenbuterol, which is a banned substance. Now, the promoter, Frank Warren, the promoter for Billy Joe Saunders, is saying, and the promoter for the WBO champion, Billy Joe Saunders, said that now Gennady Golovkin and he are in a talks with one another for to fight in the fall. Now, before I get into that, because that has a lot of ramifications. It's got a ramification for Canelo Alvarez, for and other fighters. But before I do that, please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so we can talk about this in a live stream. I hope you take in my invitation to participate in our live streams so we can have real, one-on-one, or not one-on-one, but real-time conversations between yourself and I and the people in the other boxing fans in the comments and in the comment section. It's typically a very, very mature and respectful boxing community and boxing discussion, and I think you'll enjoy. So I hope that you accept my invitation to attend, and the best way to do that is by hitting the bell, subscribing, and hitting the bell icon. Now, with that said, let me go through what Frank Warren says, man, because this has implications across the board, and it's actually, although there's other bouts that I want to see between Gennady Golovkin and with the Gennady Golovkin face, and I did definitely want to see this rematch between Canelo Alvarez and Gennady Golovkin. I think that if this fight happens, it could be the best thing for boxing because it means unification of all the belts. So, promoter Frank Warren has confirmed that talks are in progress for WBO middleweight world champion Billy Joe Saunders to face WBA, IBO, WBC, and IBF champion Gennady Golovkin in autumn. Should he come through his fight with Martin Murray at London's O2 Arena on June 23rd. Golovkin was due to fight Saul Canelo Alvarez on May 5th in Las Vegas, but the Mexican withdrew from the rematch on Tuesday, causing widespread rumors that Saunders would step in as a late replacement. However, Saunders' promoter has confirmed that the undefeated Hatfield star will make the 4th defense of his world title against domestic rival Murray on June 23rd, as originally planned. I have spoken with Golovkin's promoter, Tom Loeffler, and Golovkin versus Saunders is in play for this autumn, said Warren. May 5th was never going to happen because of Bill's hand injury, and Golovkin's team are going ahead with a fight on that date, so couldn't make a fight in June. Bill will definitely be defending his belt against Martin Murray on June 23rd. If he comes through his fight against Martin, then we are hoping he will get the chance to unify the welterweight division against Golovkin this autumn. That would be a huge fight and one we would love to make here in the UK. Golovkin has said many times that he wants to add the WBO belt to his collection, and it's a fight that Bill would jump at. There should be no problem making it. It's on paper, it's a brilliant fight, and one's fans have been calling for. This is a fight that will define Bill's legacy, and I genuinely believe he will win. If anyone can beat Golovkin, then it's Bill. He has the style and the boxing skills. But he first has to deal with Martin on June 23rd. Yeah. So that's good to know that that it's in quote unquote the works. Now, obviously, there's a lot of ifs to that. If Gennady Golovkin beats whoever it is that he's going to fight next, and if Billy Joe Saunders beats Martin Murray, which I suspect that both would be the case. Now, the interesting thing for this is interesting for a couple reasons for me. One, will Gennady Golovkin put his money where his mouth is? Will he put his money where his mouth is? where Gennady Golovkin did all that yapping about Canelo Alvarez having been a cheater. He didn't believe the meat. He didn't believe, this, that, and the other thing, that the people were covering up for him. The big hissy fit he threw about the testing, right? If that's true, and I said this before, if what he really believed that to be the case, then he shouldn't have went on ahead. He shouldn't have been willing to go ahead with the bout against Gennady Golovkin, against Canelo Alvarez. If he thought that Canelo Alvarez was a bold-faced cheater, I have to suppose that because he's a cheater and he believed that he cheated in the first fight and that he's always been dirty, then I would suspect that means you think that he should be punished for his actions. So what I'm saying here is, let's see if Gennady Golovkin is willing to put his money where his mouth is. Because Canelo Alvarez, from what I understand, it looks as if the penalty that he could be facing for testing positive, and for people that come to my page telling me I don't understand and it's fake news and all this nonsense about the fact that I said that he could get between 9 months and 23 months. That's what the regulations say. That's what Nevada state law says, that it could be between 9 months and 23 months. He's a first offender, and people are saying that there's times when the Nevada State Athletic Commission has recommended 1 year suspension for people where it's a first offense. But it might be that year might get cut in half if he just goes along with the plan and says, you know what, I know that I didn't do it on purpose, but the law says that if I ingested it at all. So I understand that it was in my system. I'm not going to argue and say the tests aren't right and ask for more tests. I'm going to say, yeah, I got it from the tainted meat and I did it inadvertently. I did it negligently, but I understand that even if I did it negligently, I'm still in violation of the rules. And since I'm in violation of the rules, I'm not going to fight it, and I will take whatever the commission gives me as my penalty. I will just, whatever you guys say, I'm okay with. I just want to get this behind me. I want to move forward and fight. If Canelo Alvarez takes that approach, then from what I've heard, not from what I've read, the 9 to 23 months comes from what I've read in the same rules and regulations that are cited by the commission. The rules and the procedures laid out for the Nevada State Athletic Commission for unarmed combatants who have tested positive for a performance enhancing drug. The penalty's what I read. Now, what I've heard is that if he does what I described above, then he could get off, it could be 6 months. They could penalize him a year, but then they could cut that in half because he cooperated. So give him the year penalty, which is between 9 months and 23 months, but then reduce that penalty by 6 months. And then on top of that, allow the penalty to have retroactively begun on the day that he tested positive, which would have been the first time, which I think was February 17th. And if they do that, then Canelo Alvarez might very well be available to fight on September 15th, which would mean the autumn. That is autumn. That is fall. Right? So that was what I say is, will Gennady Golovkin put his money where his mouth is? Will he go for unification against Billy Joe Saunders and collect all 4 belts? Or will he bypass Billy Joe Saunders and take the money and get in there with a guy that he said was a cheater and who, if he really believes all that, don't take the fight at all. Pass up the money and fight Billy Joe Saunders for the glory. For the glory, because you already won the fight, right, Gennady? Isn't that's what everybody says whenever I do a video and I say I scored it for Canelo? I get a bunch of comments where everybody telling me I'm an idiot, and there's no way in the world that anybody who has 2 eyes in their head could have possibly scored it for Gennady Golovkin. Like, there was 5 knockdowns that I missed or something. But hey, man, Will Gennady Golovkin put his money where his mouth is? Will he take this fight? And I think he should have been taking this fight. He should have taken the fight when he should have taken this Billy Joe Saunders fight and unified the belt when Billy Joe Saunders won the belt. I do believe that was before the Canelo fight, the first one. And if nothing else, he could have negotiated for it this time. But that's what Abel Sanchez said. No, they didn't want that fight because, Billy Joe Saunders fights with that boxing style. You know what I mean? That boring style, that slick style. He doesn't engage. He's not just going to sit his head out there on a tee and let you pummel it in order to make the crowd cheer. One of those boring fighters. That's what Billy Joe Saunders is, right? He's that boring fighter. But if Gennady Golovkin is real about what he said and complaining about Canelo Alvarez, I'm sure that he'll pass up that $8 million payday and get paid 8 times less to fight Billy Joe Saunders, right? On regular HBO and or do pay-per-view, right? And sell 300,000 pay-per-views, get you some chump change off the edge of that. Not chump change for regular people, but chump change for, compared to what he get for that Canelo fight. I'm quite sure he'll do that. And do what I want to see. Unification of the middleweight belts, which I do believe will be the first time that the WBC, that the middleweight division has been unified since Jermaine Taylor beat Bernard Hopkins the first time. Right? He won't go up and take a little more money to fight Jose Ramirez up on 168 pounds. Right? He'll stay right there and unify those belts and do what Usyk and Garcia might be doing in the finals of the World Boxing Super Series for the Cruiserweight division, and doing what Terrence Bud Crawford did at 140 pounds, right? And become the undisputed unified middleweight champion of the world, and do what Bernard Hopkins did. We'll see. And see, I'll take that over, and I'll take that over the other fights. I would take that over Demetrius. I take that over. Now, I don't know who Gennady Golovkin is going to get in the ring with in May, because he's saying he wants to fight May 5th, still fight May 5th, right? So I don't think that Jamal Charlo is available, because Jamal Charlo is supposed to be fighting Centino. But hey, man, maybe the WBC will let that slide and say, hey, well, actually, no, that's like 2 weeks from now. So I don't think that's going to be able to, I don't think that that's going to happen. Right. Or is it going to be Demetrius Andrade? I would love to see Gennady Golovkin in there with Demetrius Andrade. Right. Also, there is, of course, there's Daniel Jacobs. Right. You can see if I'm not sure what the schedule. I think actually Daniel Jacobs is supposed to be fighting Selecki. So it's going to be interesting to see who exactly Gennady Golovkin will fight in this May 5th thing. But without a doubt, and I'm sure Gennady Golovkin and Abel Sanchez are really going to be able to go for their legacy. They're going to go for the big time, and they're going to fight Billy Joe Saunders and make sure they get that easy money with them 4 belts. I'm not going to hold my breath, though, because I think Billy Joe Saunders beats Gennady Golovkin. I think Gennady Golovkin showed that he has a hard time with movement, and Billy Joe Saunders is a better mover. Has better footwork and better agility than Canelo Alvarez. Also, Billy Joe Saunders is bigger than Canelo Alvarez. I think Billy Joe Saunders probably could be at 168 pounds and still do good work at 168 pounds. So we'll see what happens, man. We'll see what happens. But Gennady Golovkin, if you're not serious, all that yapping about him cheating, I'm sure that this guy is not going to just go out there and try to fight a cheater, a dirty, rotten scoundrel who is a lifelong PED user in Canelo Alvarez, and he's going to let that $8 million go, right? And fight the other guy who actually has a belt in Billy Joe Saunders. right? Or is he going to use that as a boring style? You know, the style that he's fighting is more important than the belt. You know, we'll see. We'll see. But hey, man, there's also some other things that are going on. I'm going to talk about just real briefly in this video because I think this is going to be probably the last video that I do for today, and get on with some, I might do a live stream later. But also, the WBC, it seems like they're trying to have Sean Porter and Danny Garcia fight a title eliminator now that Keith Thurman is hurt. That could be, I'm really looking forward to that, man. I'm certainly hoping that they do that. Right? I think that they should do that. Because Keith Thurman, and then strip Keith, but honestly, I think they should strip Keith Thurman. If they strip, I might actually do a video about this. If they strip Keith Thurman from inactivity for the WBC, and they just had the number 1 and number 2 guys fight, I think that would be a better deal. Danny Garcia could fight Sean Porter, then it wouldn't have mattered who the number 1 or the number 2 is, right? And if Danny Garcia decides not to take the fight, because that's my fear for that fight, is that Danny Garcia wouldn't take the fight. My understanding it is that the WBC wanted Danny Garcia to fight Sean Porter before Danny Garcia fought Brandon Rios, and he wasn't willing to take the fight. But if they strip Keith Thurman, or at least move him up to some champion status, where once he gets healthy, that he'll automatically be able to fight again for the belt. Kind of like they did with Vitaly Klitschko. I think they had him champion emeritus, something like that. You know, throw Keith Thurman up there as champion emeritus, or champion in recess, or champion who's hurt, or champion who keeps making up excuses, or whatever type of name they want to give Keith Thurman for this injury after injury after injury after injury laden nonsense that's been going on. That's been preventing a lot of good fights from happening in the welterweight division. Whatever they got to do with Keith Thurman and Sean Porter, Keith Thurman, move him up out of that WBC championship spot. Let Sean Porter and Danny Garcia fight. And then the winner of that will be the champion, and then they can fight Keith Thurman. And then we don't have to wait so damn long. Because right now, as it is, they have the WBC. WBC has Keith Thurman is the champion. Then they have Danny Garcia is the number 1 guy. Sean Porter is the number 2 guy. But yet the first mandatory that they ordered was Sean Porter for Keith Thurman. And after that, if Keith Thurman, the winner of Keith Thurman and Sean Porter, would have to fight Danny Garcia. Because under the rules of the WBC, the champion for the WBC, whoever beats the champion automatically inherits the mandatory requirements of the champion. So it really doesn't matter who wins between Keith Thurman and Sean Porter. The winner of that would have to fight Danny Garcia, because Danny Garcia was named as a mandatory. And that's from what I can see of the regulations, that's the benefit that comes from that. Having 2 mandatories named. It pretty much means that you're going to have those 2 guys. If Sean Porter beats Keith Thurman, then Danny Garcia immediately gets a title shot. But now that Keith Thurman gets injured, it now puts that title shot that would have happened, in my opinion, when Sean Porter beats Keith Thurman. Because I'm taking this next fight, I'm taking Sean Porter over Keith Thurman. I think he's been in the ring with him before. Keith Thurman is acting like he don't want to fight nobody. I mean, he's been seriously inactive. He's coming off of like 3, back-to-back injuries. You know, I'm going to take Sean, and I thought the Sean Porter fight with Keith Thurman was already a close fight. That I definitely did score for Keith Thurman, but you know, there ain't no guarantee that would come out there. So I would have said that this fight between Sean Porter and Danny Garcia is going to be inevitable regardless. But, you know, it is what it is, man, and we'll see. But hopefully the fight will happen, man, because at the end of it, man, I want all of that nonsense, you know, done so that we can get, if it's Keith Thurman that fights Errol Spence Jr. for that WBC belt, if it's Danny Garcia that fights if it's Danny Garcia that winds up fighting Errol Spence Jr., or if it's Sean Porter, whoever has the WBC belt, I want to fight Errol Spence Jr. so we can get answers on who the best welterweight is. And because assuming if the fight happens on the WBC, the WBA belt is going to be carried with it. Because if you beat Keith Thurman for the WBC, you're going to win the WBA. So then you'll have WBA, one guy holding WBA, but hopefully a guy that's more active, and they can get in there with the IBF, and then the welterweight division can do what Gennady Golovkin can do, or Billy Joe Saunders can do at 160 if they wind up making that fight happen. And with that, I'm out. Peace.